your take on this? In a mixed economy, well, are we going to naturally have more Ken Lay types, not just in energy, but in industry in general?
I'm afraid so. It's a different skill set to succeed in a very politicized economy rather than a free market economy. And we're seeing this more and more in the energy industry, where the free market-driven companies like ExxonMobil have a harder time competing against the politically oriented companies. For example, a Ken Lay protege at Enron and my old big boss is a fellow named James Rogers, who is now the chairman of Duke Energy. And it's James Rogers who has, more than any other single person in the electric utility industry, brought his industry to the table with the climate alarmists and the environmental pressure groups in order to say that, yes, we know regulation's coming, but regulate us in a way that doesn't hurt us. So Jim Rogers has taken the political capitalism model of Ken Lay and applied it to a debate that's raging right now, and that is over cap and trade and other climate-related provisions in a bill that's been passed by the House and is now under debate in the Senate.
Well, now that's a fascinating point, Rob, because, as you know, I'm here in North Carolina, and somebody recently asked me, what's going on at Duke Energy? Why are they taking some of these positions? But based on what you just said, it makes perfectly good sense.
Right. Jim Rogers will look at his bottom line, what regulations will do to it, and his feeling is we'll get to the table first and get the regulations the way we want it, so my company benefits at the expense of others. Well, he's not thinking in terms of necessarily hurting others, but he wants to benefit himself, his company. And when you do that, someone is going to lose. And the losers are other companies or his own ratepayers.
Wow, that's very insightful. Let me ask you this, Rob. Going back to your book here, in the first 3 chapters, kind of giving an outline here for my listeners, you talk about 3 people. The first chapter is Adam Smith, and you talk about Samuel Smiles, the second chapter, Ayn Rand, the third chapter. But I think a fascinating point, Rob, that you bring up in the first chapter about Adam Smith, and I think a lot of us free marketers tend to even forget this, that Adam Smith talked about a separation of politics and business. Isn't that what we really need ultimately to keep? I guess as long as the government can't give away taxpayer money to business, that would stop all the political capitalism, wouldn't it?
Right. If we had restraints from the government side, it certainly would. But I think what needs to be done to get from our current politically driven economy to a free market system is for a new ethic to arise among voters where they look at corporate welfare negatively. And whether you're an investor or a consumer, you let it be known that you do not favor special government favor for a business. So this is reform that you really can't expect to just originate from government. We need to all begin thinking in terms of a free society and what is good business versus bad business. And I think Enron is just one case study of bad business practices coming out of the mixed economy.
That is a great point. What I hear you saying there, Rob, is that until the American people demand that we eliminate corporate welfare, we really can't expect it to end.
Right, and this is an idea that can get traction from the left and the right, because from the left, there is distrust of big business, and the educational case that we need to make is that business can be good or bad, and a free market business is, in general, a much better citizen, so to speak, than a political capitalism company like an Enron or even a Duke Energy.
Right. Well, let's do this, Rob. We're coming up on a second break here, and we'll pick it up there when we come back. So to my listeners, you're listening to Free Markets. I'm Mike Beitler, your host. My guest today is Dr. Robert Bradley, the author of Capitalism at Work. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to the third segment of Free Markets. I'm Mike Beitler, your host. My guest today is Dr. Robert Bradley. He is the author of Capitalism at Work. And we're having a really interesting discussion here about his book and his experiences in the energy industry in particular. What I'd like to do now, Rob, is if we look at the book itself, the first three chapters, you titled these Heroic Capitalism. And I think that what you're saying, this is basically our answer for the current problems. We need to get back to this. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by heroic capitalism?
Heroic capitalism is capitalism as it should be and not as it has been in the U.S. experience. And when you look at corporate controversies, whether it's Enron, WorldCom, and, of course, what's happened more recently, you see patterns of bad behavior. And some of this has a lot to do with the mixed economy, like gaming opportunities with the politicized accounting code, the politicized tax code, or highly regulated energy trading. But some of it is also just bad business practices where entrepreneurs are making mistakes that are preventable and should be corrected going forward. And so what I did is I looked back at the writings of three major capitalist philosophers, moralists, Adam Smith in his great work preceding The Wealth of Nations called Theory of Moral Sentiments. He was first, and then second was a gentleman that almost no one knows about, and someone who I did know about when I started writing the book. His name is Samuel Smiles, and he was an English moralist who in the 19th century wrote a book called Self-Help, which was really the first book for people who were entering the workforce with some sort of managerial capability. And so he sort of expounded good versus bad behavior in the workplace. And this is his book, Self-Help, which came out in 1859, was a bestseller. It was selling tens of thousands of books, even back in its early day. So Smiles is very good on applied capitalism. And then the third person is Ayn Rand, whose writings, in particularly Atlas Shrugged, suggest or really outline good managerial behavior. What is sustainable business behavior? And indeed, you look at Atlas Shrugged and you see powerful foreshadowing of the problems that occurred at some of these companies, such as Enron. So you put these three together, Smith, Smiles, and Rand, and you can come up with a real model of good business behavior and success in a free market economy.
Yeah, you do a great job, Rob, of bringing these three people together, and as you said, it does present a great model. Then if I look at the second part of your book here, Rob, there's three chapters in that as well: business opportunity, business of politics, and the U.S. and U.S. Political Capitalism. You do a great job here, Rob. This must have been an unbelievable amount of scholarly work because you're bringing together historians and economists and philosophers. But I think it gives the reader a real good sense of how we got to where we are, why we have a mixed economy, and then the possible downfalls. It's really well done.
Thank you.
And then Rob, the last section where you talk about energy and sustainability, I guess because of time constraints, can we do this, Rob? Can we pick your brain here a bit? So what do you recommend now for the future of energy?
Enron was an energy company, and a lot of the mixed economy has involved energy, and that's why energy has a prominent place in a book on political capitalism. But looking at the current raging debates over climate change-related regulation, whether it's putting a cap on carbon dioxide emissions, whether it's introducing a mandate for renewable energy, or it's tightening up, mandating energy efficiency standards for everything we buy. All this I characterize as the Enron approach to energy sustainability, because if you look back at Enron's profit centers, Enron was very active with wind and solar and energy efficiency. And so my criticism of the Obama energy policy and the House bill that just passed, the so-called Waxman-Markey bill, is that this is really the Enron Revitalization Act of 2009. So I am trying to link the current misplaced approach toward energy policy with Enron to say this is not where we want to go. We don't want to politicize the energy economy. We don't want to foster the next generation of Ken Lays. We want to go in a different direction, a direction of consumer-driven energy, which gets you right to oil, gas, and coal, the reliable, affordable energies that consumers voluntarily decide to buy.
Yeah, that's very insightful. So how about this, Rob? Let's talk just a little bit about, as I mentioned, Capitalism at Work, which I think is a great book. It's part of a trilogy. So the second and third books, when is the second book due out, and what are you going to be covering in that?
The second book will be out next spring, and it's sort of the history book in the trilogy. Book one, again, is the worldview book, and that's a book I would recommend to any of your listeners who are interested in the big picture of free market capitalism versus political capitalism. So book two will be a history book looking at the predecessor companies to Enron, and there were a variety of them. And these companies are interesting, and it's the type situation you can write a very interesting chapter on a company, but if you wrote a whole book about the company, it'd get boring. But and then the third book in the trilogy, which is tentatively titled Ken Lay and Enron, an American Tragedy, will come out in 2011, and what I'm going to do is to take the lessons of Enron and apply them to the current financial crisis to try to compare and see what is similar, what is different. And I can blame the current financial crisis on the mixed economy, on political capitalism, much in the same way that I blame the artificial company Enron on the mixed economy.
Yeah, interesting. So as we're winding down here, we only have about 2 minutes left, Rob. So let me try to sum up what you've been saying today. So what I hear you saying is the mixed economy is the problem, but then the solution is that the American people need to educate themselves about this and then speak out against it. Would that sum it up pretty nicely?
Right. I think you're correct. And it's not only the public, though. We need to get the intellectual class that many of them don't like capitalism, but they don't realize that really the bad part of capitalism is the political side rather than the free market side. So my book is intended to try to reach the intellectual class to take another look at capitalism, even from the left. Because if you get realistic, you'll realize that in a mixed economy, the worst will get on top. We will get the Enrons, and that if they will take another look at what I call heroic capitalism, the worldview of Smith, Smiles, and Rand in particular, that maybe this will open their minds to think of capitalism differently and to come to very different conclusions as a result.
I think that is well said, Rob. I think you're right. It's the American people in general need to think about these issues differently, but you're absolutely right. I mean, when you talk about the intellectual class, I'm a college professor in a business school, and the intellectuals, if I can call them that, really are just anti-business, which is really sad because we need capitalism to fuel the economy and to create jobs, and I think your book does an excellent job bringing these issues to surface, and it is readable by the general public as well. So, Rob, as we're winding down here, I just want to thank you for being with us today and sharing your insights. These have been great.
Well, it's very good being with you, and it sounds like you have a great show. I need to start listening to all your segments.
Oh, please do. And like I said, we want to try to get you here to the Carolinas for some speaking engagements as well.
That would be a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, we'll get you here.
And thanks to BB&T and John Allison, there's a fairly rare example of a free market capitalist. We need more individuals like him and companies like his.
Oh, I think that's a great point, Rob. And, like I say on at the beginning of the show, I'm proud to be sponsored by BB&T, because they do believe in these principles. Well, Rob, thanks very much. And to my listeners, I wanted to tell you that you have been listening to Dr. Robert Bradley today. He is the author of Capitalism at Work, which is currently available, and that's the first book in a trilogy called Political Capitalism. So be looking for those next two books as well, but go ahead and get